All right, Met fans, welcome back here to the Sports Talk Nation. Michael Cohen here with you. And in a lot of ways, the New York Mets have dodged a bullet. Pun intended. So the big story, of course, over the last several days, if not weeks, has been the pending free agency, or the free agent decision for that matter, of Trevor Bauer, Cy Young Award winner for the National League this past year. In a year that was a COVID-shortened season of only 60 games, he made only 12 starts, pitching against a lot of bad teams in the NL Central, and still won that award. Not going to take anything away from him, but keep in mind, a guy with a career ERA around 4, and the Mets were considering at one point paying him, potentially, as the offer was put out there, $40 million a year. $40 million. I saw a few options out there that were reported. The Mets were looking at potentially offering him $40 million for year one, $40 million for year two, opt-outs in either year one or year two. It's ridiculous. Crazy money for a pitcher who, very talented pitcher, but hasn't always been consistent all the time, and it's hard to justify anybody, for that matter, getting $40 million a year. Now, as we also have just found out, Bauer instead will be heading to the Los Angeles Dodgers, and in a lot of ways, as it was reported by John Heyman, he will be heading to L.A. with the defending World Series champion L.A. Dodgers, and in a lot of ways, when you step back and look at this, it feels in a lot of ways that Trevor Bauer used the Mets as leverage to get more out of the Dodgers. Well, why do I say that? Well, even though it's a $102 million contract, and as Jeff Passan reports on ESPN, even though the Mets offered a higher value, take a look at these per annual year numbers. You're talking 3-year deal, $40 million in year one, $45 million in year two. Are you kidding? $45 million in year two, with opt-outs after both years one and year two. That's crazy. That's crazy money. $45 million in year two. You got to be kidding me. And look, I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that Trevor Bauer is a bad pitcher. And look, I'll go over the stats here again. Had a great year last year. Was a strikeout machine last year. It's 100 strikeouts in 73 innings. I totally understand that, but it was a small sample size. Very small sample size against only teams in the NL Central last year because it was a shortened season. Overall in his career, he has a 4 ERA. Think about some of the other pitchers in Major League Baseball, like a Garrett Cole, who at the time had what was a record contract of about $36 million a year. Think about that. Garrett Cole is one of the best pitchers in baseball. Makes $36 million a year with the Yankees, and Trevor Bauer, who you would think may not be on that same level at this point in his career, is making more than he is. That is going to really upset the market and change things. And you talk about some of the other big pitchers that are going to become free agents down the road. What are they going to be looking for at that point? And it is a gamble. Let's just step away from the Mets for a second. It's a gamble for any team to put that kind of money into a starting pitcher. One, because of injuries, obviously, but the other because you only see them once every 5 days. $45 million. That's $85 million in 2 years with opt-outs each year. That's crazy. And it feels like the Mets got churned in a lot of ways. It really does. For Bauer's services, and in a lot of ways, I have to say, for the Dodgers, good luck, because you're going to need it. Are the Dodgers a better team? I mean, they're a better team than the Mets, even without Bauer. I mean, they didn't need to have Trevor Bauer. Now they add him with Kershaw and Walker Buehler. Yeah, on paper they look great, but they were already the World Series champions anyway. They were a better team to begin with. Who I think is better off? I think the Mets are better off, because now they can spread that money around. You move on. Because Bauer I'll be honest with you, had the Mets signed Bauer, I would have been frustrated, because you take a look at everything that's going on here with the Mets over the last few weeks. Let's just start there. Started with Jared Porter and the incident with the female reporter back when he was with the Cubs, when he sent lewd photos to her. He ends up getting fired by the Mets, and the Mets go out there and they say, yeah, well, you know what, we have to re-examine our vetting process. Okay? Then you have the situation with Steve Cohen and GameStop as he gets into a scuttle with David Portnoy of Barstool Sports over Cohen's involvement with the GameStop controversy. That eventually leads to Cohen saying that he had people threatening him and his family on Twitter. He leaves Twitter. As a result, you had that incident. And then you have the story with Mickey Callaway also sending lewd photos to female media personalities, including his times as manager of the Mets. He has since been suspended as the Angels pitching coach. So you have all these PR nightmares going out there, and you have the Mets potentially looking at bringing in Bauer, who has his own YouTube channel, very involved in Twitter, very out there in social media. You look at a lot of his videos, he comes off at times very engaging, personable, but also can be very polarizing, as we saw with the story that came out a couple years ago and was rehashed again in recent days, if not weeks, about the incident that he had where he was supposedly harassing a woman on Twitter. So you have that incident. You also have the situation a couple years ago when he was with the Cleveland Indians before he got traded, where he took a baseball, as Terry Francona was coming out to take him out of the game, took a baseball, turned around, and chucked it over the center field wall. He has a tendency to ruffle feathers the wrong way and can be a bit of a PR headache. Considering everything the Mets had just gone through PR-wise, I don't know if bringing in Bauer would have been the smartest PR decision from that standpoint. That being said, it's time for the Mets to move on. The Mets still have holes in the outfield. They still have concerns, I think, in the bullpen and even the starting rotation. They could go out there now, use that money, and add different pieces where they need it. You take a look, you still have guys like Marcell Ozuna as well as Jackie Bradley Jr. available via free agency. You can sign one of them and take care of your outfield problem, especially Jackie Bradley Jr., who you can plug right there in center field, and that takes care of you defensively in center field. Pitching-wise, you want starting pitching? Okay, well, look, you have guys like Mike Foltynewicz a couple years ago, solid pitcher for the Atlanta Braves a couple years ago, had an ERA around 2.29 that year. Injuries the last couple of seasons, but still, he's out there, only 29 years old. You want someone else another name out there, Jake Odorizzi, 31 years old, same age as Trevor Bauer. He is available. So the Mets could go out there and go get somebody like him, a veteran pitcher who has had a lengthy career both with Tampa Bay, Minnesota, won 15 games for Minnesota just 2 years ago. So there's a potential free agent out there available. You want to go out there and improve bullpen. You can still go out there and improve your bullpen if you're the Mets. I mean, there's so many options now on the table, with just 2 weeks to go before spring training, that the Mets could go out there and still fill their roster and spend that supposed $40 million in other places and spread the wealth around and still field a team that could be very good and very competitive this year. Okay? Do I think had the Mets added Bauer that they would have been automatic World Series contenders? I don't know. I mean, the guy's going to pitch every fifth day? I don't know. You never know with starting pitching. That's the bottom line. I think losing George Springer to the Blue Jays was a worse loss for the Mets than losing Bauer to the Dodgers, in my opinion. Springer would have been a guy who could play center field. He hits with power, hits for average. Losing him to the Blue Jays hurt. Losing Bauer to the Dodgers, you move on. And you move on and you try to find someone else. You still have DeGrom at the top of this rotation. You still have Carrasco. You still have Syndergaard coming back. You have Stroman. So there's still good pitching on this team, and they could go out there and still fill a lot of holes on the Mets side of things. And also, the focus now will turn towards re-signing guys like Francisco Lindor to a long-term contract and Michael Conforto to potentially a long-term contract. And that's really where the Mets fans' focus really wants to be at. That's where the Mets' focus should be at. So at the end of the day, it's not the worst thing in the world. Now, let me just flip things over here to the Yankees into their offseason. And they have had the quiet offseason, whereas the Mets have made a lot of noise this offseason, a lot of big moves, obviously going out there with the Mets getting McCann and getting Lindor and getting and of course with the Trevor Bauer rumors and all the other things that have been going on with the Mets, the Yankees have kind of taken a back seat, but they have had a very quiet all season. And I still sit there and wonder, have they done enough? Bringing back DJ LeMahieu obviously was the biggest move of all for the Yankees. 6-year deal, $90 million, spread out over 6 years. One of the best hitters in baseball, was the Yankees' best player in my mind, in a lot of people's minds over the last 2 years. They had to bring him back. But the big question for the Yankees is going to be, do they have enough starting pitching? Masahiro Tanaka leaving to go back to Japan, setting a 2-year deal over there. So they lose their number 2 guy, and they have taken a lot of gambles, guys like Corey Kluber, as well as trading for Jameson Taillon, 2 guys who are coming off of injury, Taillon coming off of Tommy John surgery, and they get him in a trade with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Those are 2 big gambles. You also have questions about some of the guys that are already in the rotation or coming off of injury, guys like Luis Severino, also coming off of Tommy John surgery, Domingo Germán coming off of suspension. If the Yankees can get those guys to pitch the way they are capable, or what their baseball card says from a few years ago, then yeah, they'll be fine. If not, Yankees are going to be hurting for pitching. We know their offense is going to hit a lot of home runs. We know that's what they do. They score a lot of runs in bunches. And they're going to win games just by their offense, for that matter, this year. But they need pitching, and they're going to be a team later in the year that's going to be saying, look, let's just get through 81 games the first half of this year and see if we can trade for some starting pitching in July. And that's basically where the Yankees are at this point in the year. Again, much like the Mets, they could go out there, they could still add some pieces for that matter, but they're going to be looking to, I think, most likely trying to acquire pitching later in the year when we get towards the trade deadline. So, folks, that's where we stand right now. We are just, 2 weeks away from spring training. We will have spring training start on time this year. The Players Union rejected the owner's proposal of pushing the start of the season back a month because of, again, COVID protocols. They were proposing a 154-game schedule, but players said, no, we're going to continue as is, so you will have the regular season begin April 1st. It will be a 162-game season, and hopefully we can get through that, but baseball is just around the corner. I know there's a lot of snow on the ground here in the Northeast, but we are ready for baseball in a lot of ways. So, folks, remember to like and subscribe here to the Sports Talk Nation on YouTube. Leave your thoughts below. How do you feel about Bauer going to the Dodgers? Are you crestfallen over it? Are you glad that he's going over there? Do you feel that he used the Mets in this situation? Leave your thoughts below. And also remember to follow us at OpenMicNJ on Twitter and Facebook.com/OpenMicProgram. We'll talk to you next time.